So Bertrand Russell argues his entire structure of his argumentation as far as separating Christianity up into all these little bits and attacking these, just like the Patriots versus Panthers example, it's very much ignorant of the way Christianity actually works. Another example I can think of is, for example, if you take sodium and then if you take chloride and say, well, sodium is a poison and chloride is a poison, so we can just do entirely without either of them. That doesn't make any sense, because sodium chloride, when you combine them, as again, things do this, is salt, which is something that you need to live. And I know that's true, because I saw it on Wikipedia. Let me give you a real-world example of just sensitivity to the entirety of someone's worldview. Recently, in the light of the whole obsession thing, and if any of you went to the Religious Studies event last night, I heard it was fantastic. Somebody asked me my thoughts on the Islamic concept of jihad. And the only honest response I have to say is that as of right now, I don't yet know enough about Islam to say really anything meaningful about the concept of jihad, because I can't understand it completely in isolation without understanding the way it fits in with the entire Islamic worldview. So two things to take from that. One, maybe if everyone had taken the time to really learn enough about Islam to understand jihad in context, we wouldn't be at war right now. Maybe. I'm not saying yes, I'm just saying maybe. Secondly, note how I said I didn't yet understand enough about Islam. Like with politics and religion, as I was saying earlier, we need to be willing to put in the time to really research these and dialogue about these, or else we can't talk about them at all, and they cease to have relevance in our conversations and in our relationships. So, long and short of it, I hope that I'm not making this mistake myself. I hope that when I'm engaging with Bertrand Russell's humanism over the course of the next 10-15 minutes, that I really do understand enough about where he's actually coming from to engage his thought in the context. And I'm trying hard enough. I'm doing an independent study on humanism next semester, just to sort of more solidify my understanding of where he's coming from. You know, that you really have to do that before you can, in Marvin Gaye's words, find out what's going on. I would say you have to walk a mile in Bertrand Russell's shoes, or smoke a mile in his pipe, before you can engage something as complex as his worldview. Cool, so once we've analyzed and sought to understand the interactions of beliefs and the complexity of beliefs, and this, again, takes a lot of time, of someone's worldview, then we can start to think critically about it. And if you're saying, well, from a perspective of an entirely different worldview, how can you think critically about someone else's worldview? You said you can't get outside it, some weird neutral point, and then argue. And I'm saying you don't have to, because you can understand the religion, the worldview, to see whether it fails or stands by its own lights. For example, if, as Bertrand Russell is arguing for something, if there are contradictions in what he's arguing, then his worldview loses credibility, or at least his reasoning and the way he exposits his worldview loses credibility, because there are contradictions in his argumentation. And since we mostly have his argumentation in the form of objections, but as I said earlier, you can't argue against something without arguing for something, so we get a pretty vivid picture, just from why I'm not a Christian, of his humanism, and I think we can analyze it critically. Let me give you an example of contradictions as they manifest themselves in sound arguments. Say, for example, I was making a case against the eating of veal, specifically Beasky's new veal ski. I can think of two pretty sound objections that I can bring against the eating of veal. For example, one, that it's immoral to eat the flesh of any animal, so therefore it's wrong to eat veal. That's one argument. Secondly, that beef just tastes so much better that if we just let the calf mature and grow up and then kill it and eat it, well, it's so much better, so the eating of veal is wrong on that ground. I can make either of those arguments, and they each have their place within a certain worldview. What I can't do is make both of those arguments, because then I'm refuting myself. And so similarly, if Bertrand Russell did that, if he made conflicting points that contradict one another, then it takes credibility away from his own worldview. Does he do that in his essay, Why I'm Not a Christian? I think he does. Let's talk about it. Got a few interesting examples. First, Bertrand Russell discusses the teachings of Christ. And though he concludes with admittedly some reservation that the man Christ was a great and moral teacher, he says that he agrees with the principles taught by Christ and makes the argument that Christians don't actually live as much as they should by the teachings of Christ. And I have to say that he makes a very, very good argument for this. The charge, similar to the charge of hypocrisy, is very sound. And I have to admit with chagrin that Bertrand Russell is definitely right, and that Christians don't always behave the way they should. and that they really ought to hold more tightly to the teachings of Christ. I know I personally don't live up to it. So if Bertrand Russell had stopped there in his argumentation, I could be wholly chastened by it, and it would be a good reasoning for a skeptic to reconsider Christianity as a worldview. But Bertrand Russell doesn't stop there. He makes another point that sort of shoots holes in the first point. I'll read from it. It says, in the so-called ages of faith, where men really did believe the Christian religion in all its completeness, there was the Inquisition with all its tortures. There were millions of unfortunate women burned as witches, and there was every kind of cruelty practiced upon all sorts of people in the name of religion. Now, you can't argue that both, one, Christ is a great moral teacher, who we should heed his words more, and two, that when people do fully heed Christ's teachings, they do terrible moral things. Bertrand Russell's arguing against himself. I would favor, I guess it sort of comes down to two proper interpretations. When you think about these criteria logically, you can either argue that Jesus was a very bad moral teacher, properly interpreted in the medieval massacres, that that's actually what Jesus was teaching, or that Jesus was a very good moral teacher, who's either misinterpreted or his name was just used and his principles were widely rejected in the Middle Ages. I choose the latter option. Bertrand Russell can't choose both. Bertrand Russell also argues in the argument for the remedying of injustice that the root of all religion is people looking around them and projecting from their experiences an idea of the divine. That people just interact with the world, and from the way I see the piano, and from the way I see the clock, from the way I see Thomas, I infer that there must be some higher power. It's due to his philosophy of empiricism that he thinks this is so. That we hypothesize, for example, an afterlife, a spiritual realm, justice, and so on, just from the way we interact with people, and that's where it all comes from. He says that all religions begin with the premise, after all, I only know this world, as the raw material from which religion is built. Again, maybe this argument has merit. It was argued very well by Ludwig Feuerbach. This is the same sort of argument that Marx used. Freud also used a similar argument. But then Bertrand Russell immediately seems to count against his own argument. He then argues that Christianity and its view of justice is precisely not the sort of thing that we would conclude if we were just looking at the world around us, the relationships that we engage in, and so on and so forth. Bertrand Russell makes a very strong argument that if we just look at the way I interact with the piano and the clock and Thomas and so on and so forth, I could never rationally extrapolate from the raw material that I'm given, not in a million years, that a good God sent his son to redeem the fallen world and then was risen again in 3 days. It's not going to happen. So Bertrand Russell has already limited the scope to which religion can be created, and then said that Christianity could not possibly have been created that way. So somewhere there's a flaw in his reasoning. I would say it comes from the assumption that all religion has to come from some psychological projection. A third instance of Bertrand Russell weakening his own position comes in his admission that the universe he postulates in section The Argument from Design is depressing, quote unquote. He says that it holds no hope for the future. He admits that the world will eventually decay, leaving, again I quote, something cold, dead, and lifeless, and all life will disappear, leaving no lasting significance or meaning. Yes, that is depressing. I will agree with the good third Earl of Russell. He has certainly correctly identified something that is quite depressing, utter meaninglessness at the end of the universe. Maybe it's this key attunement that he has to human emotions that earned him that Nobel Prize in Literature. Actually, he calls it a gloomy view, which I think is just the traditional British humor of understatement. In essence, a gloomy view is when you look out your window and it's a bit foggy and just a bit nippy, and so you put on a sweater, it's like, I've got a gloomy view out my window. Utter meaninglessness and emptiness is not a gloomy view. It really isn't. It's really, really, really horrifyingly, suicide-causingly depressing. And I think that we should really bring Bertrand Russell to terms on his understatement. But also, his logical problem is that in the very end of his argument, he after thoroughly arguing against Christianity, says that what the world needs and what the world will get by accepting this self-same humanist position is, quote-unquote, hope for the future. Now, Bertrand Russell is very free to argue that there is no hope, and that we need to believe that there is no hope. But he cannot also argue that we should then simultaneously believe that there is hope. That makes his position collapse in on itself, the fact that he argues both. So, closing up, after the consideration of